Hello, I'm Dr. Nithi Gupta, pediatric endocrinologist and digital wellness coach in Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome to Inspinar. My guest today, Forrest Bronzan, is the co-founder and CEO of Digital Detox, where he leads global initiatives for digital wellness. Forrest has grown the company to a customer base in over 80 countries. He has a deep passion for improving the relationship human beings have with their technology. Forrest travels the world to better understand how technology impacts our lives. A father of two children, Forrest is particularly passionate about how tech impacts kids of all ages and the challenges it presents parents. Forrest, welcome to Inspinar.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So, Forrest, tell us, why do you feel that technology is the parenting challenge for the new generation?
Look, it's something that impacts every single age group. There's a lot of other parenting challenges that might be specific to high school or fifth grade, and those are real and meaningful. But technology is something when you're born. We're dealing with screen time from age 0 to 5. Kindergarten through fifth, it's more screen time, learning apps, video games, when to get a cell phone. Middle school, we're usually seeing big decisions around social media and cell phone access. High school, it just opens up a huge ball of worms in terms of social bullying, even more social media, negative influence, et cetera. And even after high school into college, we're dealing with disconnect and decreases of empathy, increases of loneliness, and discord between families and children. So it's something from age 0 to infinite from there that's just profoundly impacted, and it's something that parents are struggling with. It's scary. They don't know the answers. We're new to a lot of this, and so a lot of folks don't know where this is going. So I empathize. I'm a parent of two. I have my own challenges. All the parents in my community have their challenges, and it's something we see around the world, a common thread of this is something that's just really, really scary to parent.
The parenting challenges are there. They're specific for all ages, but technology is a challenge that is across all ages, across all countries, across all cultures, ethnic backgrounds. What is it about technology that makes it such a big challenge that no one 0 to 99 is spared?
Yeah, I mean, it's just ingrained in our lives. Look, like it's not going away. And to be clear, we're not anti-tech. We're not advocating to live this life in the middle of the woods and turn away all your tech. No, I mean, tech's amazing and it's doing some profound things, and it's absolutely critical to learn in a smart way. But unfortunately, it also has so many downsides and so many consequences that many parents just aren't aware of at an early age. Even exposure to YouTube at a young age has some severe dangers. And I think what's happened is parents have become just too accustomed, and it's become a little bit too easy to, here's the iPad to learn math, or, go spend even more time, researching something on YouTube. And, that's in the younger ages. When we get into high school now, it's a huge problem to tackle. How do we deal with ChatGPT for writing essays? How are we how are we dealing with AI and how it's impacting body image and how it's impacting how we learn? And some of these are really great tools, and when used in the right way can be beautiful and amazing, but when used in the wrong way, it could be detrimental to the learning experience, to the development process, and to our mental health. So it's just something that's fascinating, and it's going to impact us forever. And we need to wake up and make sure that we're paying attention and doing the best that we can to get our kids set up for success.
Technology is a great tool if it is used like a tool. Unfortunately, it seems to be used as a 24/7 source of distraction and entertainment. You mentioned some issues around body harm and self-harm and body image issues. In your work, Forrest, share with us some of the data that you have found about the impact of technology on these very critical mental aspects of adolescents and teenagers.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for context, we work with families and schools around the world in multiple countries, predominantly in the US, but we have customers in 80 different countries. And unfortunately, it's teenagers that are most impacted by body image and self-harm. Now, adults definitely are as well, but vulnerable teens are at a much higher risk. So, we see for perspective, over 50% of teenagers, so I'm talking ninth through 12th grade, report feeling worse about their body after spending more time on social media. 65% report feeling more lonely for every additional hour that they spend on social media. And then somewhere north of 40%, depending on the community, 40 to 50% just feel worse about themselves after spending time online. And that's sad. And unfortunately, teenage girls are even more impacted. Those numbers increase by about 25% that we've seen across the board. And there's a lot at play here. Look, I mean, the self-image issues, that's nothing new. That's been around for generations and decades. But influencers and comparison online has just taken it to a massive new level on multiple fronts. There's just a plethora of very dangerous influencers and body influencers that are inaccurate and evangelizing just bad information. But then with AI now, we're getting into AI influencers that are completely fabricated. They don't exist, but they're creating this unrealistic image of what a perfect body, what a perfect look can be. And it's just natural for any human, but especially teenagers, to have this comparison matrix, and it unfortunately impacts their mental health in very severe ways.
Body image issues, anxiety, depression, self-harm, they have been around for generations.
Sure.
But with the introduction of technology, and like you mentioned, AI, things have been taken to a completely different level altogether. It sounds like a black hole. How do we keep our children from getting into the black hole? And if they have already gotten into the black hole, how do we pull them out?
That's a lot to unpack there. So, and I want to be careful. There's some really good uses of social media for teens. So I don't think it's a fair statement to say social media is bad for all teens. In some cases, if you're in a high risk group, being able to have access outside of your community and find like-minded teens that you can relate to, that's really valuable. It also provides a very valuable tool to learn and to learn about different cultures and different communities. So there's certainly some really, really profound benefits. In terms of, how can we prevent the risks and how do we keep them out of the black hole before they get there? I think it depends what age group we're talking to, right? So most of the data points that social media prior to ninth grade just as bad news, right? There hasn't been any reputable studies that show a strong benefit of active social media. So I'm not talking about, hey, mom and dad, let me see this funny Instagram video, but access to, a regular social media account prior to ninth grade usually increases so many issues in high school and later. So if you could wait as long as possible for social, that's what the data is pointing to being the most beneficial long term. Once you get social, then it's a different story. And I'd like to even take a step back further. We're doing a lot of work with our own teens in our community and people around the world on how can we teach age appropriate best practices and behavior, right? We have all of these great education for how to present presentations, how to write, how to communicate, but there's really no education platform or protocol for how do I communicate online? How do I respond to a text message? What's the appropriate etiquette for social media interaction? That doesn't really exist in at least a structured way. And so we find that the earlier you can start having those conversations with your children, the better off they're going to be. Just learning how to interpret different social media comments, how to interpret influencers, how to interpret the world online, and then also how to communicate the other direction. So the earlier you could start teaching some of those valuable lessons, the better, and having that conversation early. Once they get it, at the end of the day, I think one of the most important things is having a safe space and having open communication with your child, right? So I want to create with my kids an environment where hopefully they could come and talk about any of their concerns. And if you have that open dialogue and open communication, you're going to be much better set up for success to stay ahead of potential serious harm, social bullying, self-harm, suicide, etc. There's also some great companies, Bark Technologies. We have no affiliation with them whatsoever, but they're doing some great work, and they have an app that helps monitor sentiment and potential risk and harm. Really, really fascinating. We have some interesting things coming out as well. So the good news is there's so many companies in this community, this digital wellness space, that are trying to tackle this massive problem. And I'm optimistic that in due time, we're going to have even more great resources for parents to stay ahead and to keep their children safe.
It's important to have that conversation with the children, allow them the safe space to have that conversation with the parents? Do you feel the parents are knowledgeable and skillful enough to have this conversation? Or because smartphones have been around for only about 10 to 15 years, parents themselves probably need education so that they can empower their children?
Yeah, unfortunately, no, I don't think parents are equipped either because they don't know the best practice or they're too busy or they're addicted themselves. And, I hate to say this, I don't want to shame any parent out there because I know how hard it is as a parent with so many different demands on you. But the modeling of that bad behavior, if your kid grows up and you're always here looking down at your phone, of course, that's normalizing that behavior. And they're going to think that's okay to be checking the phone at the dinner table and to be constantly on their devices. You grew up in a time where our parents didn't have cell phones, right? And so they were always here. They were never here. And so I think that has a profound impact that we haven't been able to quantify yet of parents constantly addicted to their phones and what that does to their kid growing up age 0 to, let's call it, 6th or 7th grade. And once they get into middle school, they have all this track record of modeling that behavior from their parents. We don't know exactly what that long-term impact is, but my hypothesis is that it's pretty severe. But to answer your question, yeah, I think most parents aren't equipped, not necessarily at a fault of themselves, but they either just don't have the resources or tools to know what to say or how to coach, or they don't have the time, or they don't recognize how critical it is. If you have a kindergartner or first grader, you're not dealing with social bullying yet, at least online in most communities, right? So it's not as imminent, and it's usually much more of a lagging indicator. Once they actually see some of these severe issues, then they're jumping in, and at that point, unfortunately, a lot of times it's really too late to catch up and teach some of these really best practices. It's never too late, but it's much more difficult.
It's much more difficult after a certain kind of damage has happened or certain unpleasant event has happened to the child online. I think as a community, we have normalized our relationship with our devices, our dependency on our devices, and we cannot seem to think that there can be a life without being so dependent on our devices. We seem to have forgotten that our parents, were born and raised in a time where we were not surrounded by technology. And life was, maybe a few things were challenging to accomplish, finding ways around the city, around the town. Yes, GPS is great. There are lots of benefits of new technology. But I think life in general was slower and calmer and simpler. And we seem to have lost track of what all of that means, those values, how they are important for our health and well-being.
I agree completely. And it's tricky because I think some parents feel, look, this is never going away, so let's just accept it. I don't buy that argument completely. That would be like saying, okay, well, everyone's doing heroin in the class, we might as well just do it. Yes, there's some things that are incredibly beneficial, and it's accurate that AI and tech isn't just going to disappear overnight, but that doesn't mean that we completely succumb to all of the potential negative impacts. And I think a lot of parents, and again, this isn't a dig on parents, but it's just a fact of life. I think a lot of parents, they don't realize that some things that may seem innocent might actually have some big impacts. So I'll give you an example. There's a lot in the community, in our community and other communities, at the age of, call it, 3rd, 4th grade. They don't have social media yet, but they're doing text message on the iPad, maybe on a phone if they have it. And yeah, that seems innocent, but unless they learn how to rationalize some of those short responses, it's really hard to interpret a text message sometimes. So we get calls from parents, oh my goodness, my son or daughter, they're just crying at night because someone didn't reply to their text, or they replied and it came across in this very negative way, but we don't think the other person meant that. So all this kind of comes down to that communication coaching. It's complicated. And I think there's some really great learning opportunities there with, okay, well, here's how to interpret a text. Here's how to, for you sending a reply back, here's how to communicate in a much more thoughtful way. But we need more people in the community to step up and be doing some of those lessons for it all to work. Otherwise, you're going to have a couple kids that are really set up for success and then the rest that aren't.
There is so much to learn. There is, like you said, it's a learning curve to adapt parenting in the new world of technology. But technology has also become ingrained in school education for us. Children are in several schools, maybe not all, several schools hand laptops to children starting middle school. And I'm sure there are some positive aspects of this practice, but I'm also sure there are some negative impacts of this practice. Some of the laptops that the schools introduce seem to have monitoring or supervision, but our children are getting smarter. They know how to override some of the monitoring and the security systems that are placed on these laptops. So, why should all of this become a part of childhood where a child's whole being is geared towards trying to figure out how to fool their parents and the schools?
Well, no, yeah, it's interesting. And I think where it becomes complicated is there are some amazing benefits of technology in the classroom. I don't want to overshoot that point, but there's also some very complicated negative impacts. And that there's one program in particular, and I don't want to throw this company under the bus, but it's used by, vast majority of schools in the classroom and out of the classroom. But it's really promoting this hyper gamified addictive way to learn, and it's teaching a lot of bad habits of commercialization and upgrades and pressure on kids to get their parents to upgrade to the next premium option. So it's creating a lot of issues. And just the act of, I think when we started seeing all these learning apps, for example, learning math on the iPad, in theory it seemed great, right? Everything, you don't have to deal with these flashcards anymore, it's all contained, it's a computer that's helping. But we're starting to see data come out, and I'll share with my own kids that it actually is not as good of a learning tool. So in my household, my son's in fourth grade, we recently are switching, not completely off, but we're going much more old school with the actual paper book to learn algebra and flashcards. And overnight, within the first week, oh my goodness, the amount of learning that has improved once we stopped some of the learning apps. And I think some of the problems with the learning apps is it's not teaching the fundamentals of the actual math problem in this example. It's teaching kind of how to gamify it and have fun. And yeah, absolutely, it's fun. No doubt about that. It's more fun than using the flashcards, but they're not actually learning the foundations of math. So that's not across the board. There's certainly some cases where it's incredibly beneficial, and in some households where they might not have the resources or time to work with their kids with the math book or flashcards. But it's just one example of how, in theory, something on tech and on a screen is better, it's more efficient, but it's actually a little bit counterintuitive, and it's not working as well.
It would be fascinating to gather more data on that aspect and try to take it back to our schools and have a discussion with the school administration to see what their thoughts are and how can, if there is a possibility of going back to old school learning using pen, paper, and textbook.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd be pessimistic on how we'd be able to actually evangelize that and get that out. But what is true is that every parent has a choice of how they want to foster learning at home. And yeah, if your school is big on this one program, you need to stay on that program. We're not advocating to completely, go against the school and, boycott these programs, because some of them are great. Again, like some of them provide phenomenal learning tools, but it's not a blanket statement. It's not across the board for every student, for every subject. So, as a parent, you just need to be mindful and be aware. And I think one thing that it's done is it's made parents less aware of what's going on. They just assume, okay, wow, there's this amazing program. It's approved by the district, and the kids are learning and they're having fun. But are they actually learning? How is it impacting your kid in particular? Is it causing more stress? So parents just need to be really aware of what's going on with their individual child and make some calibrations as needed to make sure they get ahead.
There's a lot of learning opportunity when it comes to children of all ages, parents, schools, and the community in general. Digital Detox has been working hard for almost a decade now to take the message across the world. Tell us about the formation of Digital Detox and where is the company headed now?
Yeah, it's a really beautiful story. Thanks for asking that. And my dear friend Levi Felix, we went to middle school together, played in bands together, navigated high school together, and this was before social media, so we had it easy. He started the company in 2012 after a life-changing experience. He was overworked. He was working 90-hour weeks at a tech company and collapsed at work one day, and his health was really, really poor. So he traveled the world and came back in 2012 and said, "Look, I want to start this company to evangelize digital wellness and digital well-being." And this was 2012. This is before TikTok. This is before Instagram as we know it. So he was a visionary. He saw where things were going. And he grew the company to just amazing heights, this massive movement. It started off as this experience company where we'd have summer camps for adults and digital detox retreats and just these amazing immersive experiences. And unfortunately, Levi died of a brain tumor at age 32 in 2017. And so the company went on hiatus for a few years, and I took it over in January 2020. I had an opportunity in my life to pivot here, and I was incredibly passionate about the space. I was an early supporter from day one of the company and dear friends with Levi. And we had global experiences relaunched. You see where this is going, January 2020. And 45 days later, COVID shut us down. And so we took a breath, we took a pause, and we've been focusing the last several years on research, just understanding how tech impacts all of our lives. And now we're focused on a slightly different direction. We still do immersive experiences at a smaller scale, but we're working a lot with school districts and schools on how can they improve policy and how can they improve the mental health of their kids via technology. We're working a lot on scoring. We have a score for adults and a score for students that helps quantify how much tech is impacting their lives. We're rolling out a product and a community service for parents soon in the next couple months that I can't talk too much about yet, but it's really exciting and essentially helps parents make parenting tech less scary. And we work with people around the world. I work a lot with pro athletes on how can they get their head better in the game on and off the court and make calibrations to how their relationship is with tech, and that has a huge impact on their mental health. So we're just out there to try to help do some good in the world, and it's something that just impacts so many different ages. So I'm passionate and really optimistic about what the space is doing right now.
This is fascinating. Thank you for all the work that you are doing, the work that Digital Detox is doing. There is so much to be done in this landscape. Technology is not going anywhere. We have to learn to thrive with technology, not just survive with technology. We have to learn to help technology empower us and not engulf us. We, like you mentioned earlier, at Freedom Foundation, we are also not anti-technology. We are pro-balance. It's not just about reducing screen time, but it's about creating a life of purpose and fostering real-life connections, nurturing the bonds that truly matter in our lifelong, not just the online bonds, but the offline bonds as well.
Wonderful. Yeah. And thanks so much for everything you're doing. It's just really refreshing to see others in the space that have a common goal. And I think together we're going to really cause some really great change.
Thank you. Thank you, Forrest. Thank you for being on Inspinar. Thank you for sharing your insight, your knowledge, and the awesome work that you're doing to change the face of humanity. Thank you. Let's reconnect with the real world. Let's reconnect with health, joy, and efficiency. Let's reclaim our time and attention. Let's ungrip devices and grip life. I will see you next time.